Good evening, people. Welcome to another episode of The Bridge. We're here, glad to join you tonight in this. Well, I'm gonna say, well, we got a nice warm day here compared to some other people around the nation.
Well,
how y'all are doing this evening?
Cold. I don't know, nice. So I guess maybe because I've chosen to come outside.
I'm jealous.
Yes.
I've got my heating pad right here that I put on my feet. And that's how cold I am.
Is that a heating pad?
Yeah, I keep one with me all the time.
Yeah, I mean it's only 54 here.
It is so cold here. I put up some Christmas decorations outside earlier today. It's so cold.
Okay.
Dang.
So let's I got a couple of questions because I see some hot news that came across my screen before we got started that our number 45 has decided to sue our president-elect.
What? When did I miss this?
I just found out today. I just found out.
Before we read, go back over that again so I can laugh again, please.
Our president has decided he's going to sue the president-elect because of the election, his loss.
And he is suing him for...
him for the outcome.
The leader of the conspiracy, the leader of fraud. What?
He's blaming him for the outcome because he's a sorry bastard and he lost.
Well,
I gotta look at this from the legal perspective, so I'm looking it up.
So okay, this is so juicy.
I'm like, whoa! Now watch me read it.
The Trump campaign is suing President-elect Joe Biden directly, holding him responsible for the 2020 presidential election results. Of course, he's responsible. He won.
Wow.
He had the better campaign, and he won.
I know. Yes,
he was
responsible for winning. Yes, and I'm responsible for you losing.
But he's saying if you're responsible for winning, in his mind, you accept the fact that you cheated.
Right.
Wow.
Filed a lawsuit against Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris in Wisconsin on Monday, according to a report by TMZ. The details of the suit are not entirely clear since Trump's team has provided no substantive evidence of election tampering. The Trump campaign's new lawsuit against Biden and Harris directly and is officially titled Donald J. Trump, Michael R. Pence et al. Versus Joseph R. Biden, Kamala D. Harris et al. According to a report by the Daily Mail, the content of the suit is not much different from similar lawsuits filed against the Biden campaign, Wisconsin election officials, and other parties in the election. It asked the Milwaukee County Circuit Court to set aside the Board of Canvassers' legal determination that in-person ballots in Milwaukee County should be counted.
So he's trying to sue Biden now. And all he did was take his lawsuit, change the name on it.
That's right. That's right. He changed the defendants. That's all he did.
Yes.
It's the same
lovely
frivolous lawsuits with no substantial grounds, no legal foundation, no factual foundation, and he just made the defendants the actual campaign, the actual people of Joe Biden and I was saying it wrong, Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. So insane.
Yeah, so is that worse? Any worse than the Hail Mary from Texas?
But that's the same thing. They're doing the same thing.
I think Texas is actually worse, right? I think legally speaking, Texas is worse because Texas really has no standing whatsoever.
You're out of bounds already.
You have to have standing in order to bring a lawsuit. You have to be the injured party. There has to have been a harm done, right?
They won.
These battleground states running their elections however they see fit is of no business to Texas whatsoever. And what they're complaining about is that the battleground states passed laws that they didn't run through their own legislature, which the U.S. Constitution says that they have to do, right? Well, they passed these laws back in the summer because of the coronavirus pandemic. So they should have raised the issue back then in the summer when they first passed these laws. And Texas has themselves, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, passed laws like the Dropbox rule on his own without the Texas legislature in violation of the Constitution if the court is to buy their argument. So they've committed the same exact violation that they're alleging that the battleground states committed. And they waited until so I guess that the corruption is okay as long as the result comes out in favor of Donald Trump. But once you see that Biden won, that's when you want to bring the lawsuit. So the courts have been saying with all of Trump's lawsuits, Texas is aside, but with all of Trump's lawsuits, and this would be applicable here, that the doctrine of latches has attached, which is basically like you sat on your hands. You sat on your hands so long that now the court cannot remedy the situation because people have already voted. These votes are already being certified. The time to have raised the issue would have been back in the summer, but you sat on your hands, and so now the court cannot act to overturn an election. So Texas, I think, is worse. It's worse than what Trump is doing.
Yeah. I see.
But Natalie, I ask you, what sense does any of these moves have been made? They don't. Everything that they have done doesn't make any sense.
Everything that they have done doesn't make any sense if you're thinking about things as like, oh, I'm filing a lawsuit because I want to win a lawsuit. But that's not why they're doing this, because they know that they have no legal or factual grounds to stand on. Once the attorneys get into court, everything that they say to the media is not what they argue to the court. Instead, they argue quite the opposite, that there was no fraud, but that the court should still overturn the election. The purpose of this is to rile up the Trump base in preparation for 2024. It's to make them feel as though there's this corrupt system, and so they have to come back rearing and supporting Trump in 2024. And it's also to soothe Trump's ego because he can't handle losing. But this has nothing to do with actually thinking that you're going to win a case in any of these courts. They've been completely unsuccessful. They've only been successful in one case, and that was just moving them a little bit closer when they had the observers in the election, in the ballot room or whatever, moving the observers to 6 feet away instead of 10 feet away. That's the only thing that they've won. They've won nothing else. So they're advancing the same losing argument over and over again. They know they're not going to win. But this is fundraising as well. It's another thing. It's a money grab. So they're not only preparing for 2024, they're also raising money for 2024 and raising money for Trump's pockets because he's sending emails to his supporters to support the Trump legal fund, and is telling them a little caveat underneath that this will also go to the Trump campaign or Trump 2024. So he's just pocketing the money. So it's a money grab.
Yeah, and they have raised a lot of money. Is it close to $200 and something $1 million? They've raised it. So, but James, you asked why it doesn't make any sense. For us, like you said, it doesn't make sense. But we try to think too logically, when it comes to what we're seeing happening. But you understand, that there's a specific reason why they're doing it. And I think things could have been worse. Everything that they had hoped for, just has been dashed against the rocks. They're 1-15 in terms of, all the cases that have been thrown out. Yes, and I know there are other cases that are pending. And I would imagine that they too are going to be thrown out too.
Well,
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I was playing the devil advocate because I know what he's doing. He is like Natalie said, he's storing up the base, and I'm saying, but he is coming so close, so close. It's only a matter of I think of a couple of moves, and democracy is totally gone here.
Hmm.
I hate to
Yeah,
sound
if you
overly
if
optimistic, but this opinion is really based on my understanding of the law. He is not going to be able to overturn the results of this election. He literally has no legal standing to overturn the results of the election, short of a military coup. There is no way that he'll be able to do it through the courts. And he packed the courts with these Republican selected judges because he thought that would mean that if it came down to it, he could turn to the courts to hand him the election. And the judges just are not willing to do that, as they should never have been willing to do that, you know? So he's bringing these lawsuits for which he has no standing. He's bringing these lawsuits for which he has no legal or factual grounds. As someone put in the chat, you know, his supporters are bringing lawsuits on his behalf. They're all getting tossed out of court left and right. There's no possibility that he's going to be able to overturn the results of the election. And even the military has basically turned their backs on him. They're not going to assist him in a coup. So he's out of here come January 20th. You know, he may not have accepted it. He's a zombie president, basically, but it's over for him.
Zombie president. Oh my God! Yeah. Wow.
My biggest fear is not the judges and not the military. It's the brainwashed Trump supporters. Well, they're getting out there agitating the government and starting stuff like how they was going to do. Where is that? Michigan, where they was going to kidnap the governor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they can, his supporters, how should I put this? I'll be fair, there's unhinged people everywhere of every political stripe, but Trump particularly intends to rile up and call into action his most unhinged and unwell supporters, right? He relies on the mental illness of his supporters and relies on those people taking action for him, right? But whether or not there are unhinged people out there who might try to do something like harm the governor of Michigan or some other type of terroristic act, it's not going to overturn the results of the election. There's just not enough of them, right? You got to remember that of the voting public, Republicans are a third of the voting public. Yes, there's a high amount of people that voted for Trump, but there's only a smaller portion of them that are willing to, you know, get violent, take up arms and things like that. We have a strong United States military. We have a strong, although I'm not happy with the balance of the Supreme Court, we have a strong Supreme Court. I wouldn't leave it. I think I'd be more concerned if it was down to the Senate, if it was down to the House. I feel like the senators, the Congress people are a bit more weak, but our other branches of government are strong. They have no way that they're going to be able to do anything to stop the transfer of power. You know, they could, heaven forbid, harm both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump still won't be president come January 20th, 2021. He still won't be president. So I have no fear that Donald Trump will be the president, you know, come January. Even if he declares himself the king of the country and refuses to step out of the White House, he'll be taken out, because it's just, there are checks and balances in place. You know, unfortunately, we have the electoral college system that kind of puts a hiccup in choosing the president. I think that's a problem. But once the electoral college has gone to the person who's going to be president, all the machinery is behind that person. So Trump is done.
See, James, this is like the CNN hour, and this is Laura Coates over here. So we have our Laura Coates. Yeah, we got our own Laura Coates, baby. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. No, but I think I understand what you're saying, Jim. You're saying, not necessarily the uprising of people, because of the election, but people's attitude and their behavior to other people, moving forward, especially in these 44.5 days left for inauguration, and then what comes, right after that. My whole thing is still kind of the thing that I still, that's a little bit unbelievable to me is that within the last 4 years that the Republican Party, all the Senate, especially almost every senator just lost their balls. Just you know for fear. I'm like fear of the. Okay, so you lose an election, as Keisha Bottom, Keisha Bottoms, mayor out of Atlanta. It's like everybody, we've lost elections, but the true aspect of a leader, is you learn from your loss and you come back, stronger and better if that's your goal. You learn from the loss and you learn how to win, you know, and be a better leader, hopefully a better politician or some of some sort. But they just cowered. They're worse than the cowardly lion in the Wizard of Oz. He got more balls, I think.
No grande huevos.
Who?
Wait, you can't live in Florida and not understand
Yeah,
that.
yeah, they just lost, all direction. They didn't have any focus to start with to begin with, and they just fell lockstep, regurgitating the lies and the platitudes and everything. I'm just like, who are these people? You know, when you listen to them, in conversations, when they're being interviewed, they're not even talking about policy anymore because half of them don't even know. They're not discussing anything for the people. And I think we as the voting public, we the people, that is what's important to us, and they don't seem to give a damn. Especially what's going on with COVID. Um, we can't even get a bloody thing, passed, because they're saying, to win. What exactly are they're waiting for? I mean, I know they're waiting for, the runoff on January 5th, because that's more important to them than getting, relief to America at large. It doesn't matter if people are out suffering on the streets right now. Um, so yeah, they just need a whole new party.
Well, I say that should send Georgia should send a message to them. You don't want to move. While you see us, we're in an epidemic, a pandemic, and you don't want to move to help the people. We don't need Georgia to be red anymore. Let's go ahead and make this thing blue.
But you've seen that. But you've seen that in Georgia, it's already back to business as normal, because they have now reduced polling stations in a lot of the larger, rural black communities. So it's like back to business. Because okay, we going right back to it because that's what we know, and that's what we think works. But as they saw, you tried to take our right away to vote, and we're gonna come out any which way we can and stand up in line for however long we must stand up in, and we're gonna cast our vote because it is our right, and and our vote counts, and we showed them that yes, our vote does count and it does matter. So I think they might be in for another shocking, rudely awakening moment. Come January 5th. Which is my hope. You know, because I don't see anything going forward too fast, too quickly. If they regain the majority of the Senate for the first 2 years.
I think that's why we need a restoration of the Voting Rights Act. A
Yeah, the one that
recommitment.
goes severely. Mm.
Because ultimately what's happened here is states like Georgia, states like Texas, they would have never been able to get away with the voter suppression that they partook in 2016, 2018, and 2020. I mean, let's face it, the only reason that Stacey Abrams is not the governor of Georgia is because of voter suppression. Mike Kemp was in charge of voting for that state and running for governor at the same time. I mean, absolutely ridiculous.
How is
that not like a conflict? I don't understand how that was
absolutely a conflict of interest. It should be unconstitutional. He should have recused himself from his job as Secretary of State because he was in charge of the elections, and closed down polling stations in Black neighborhoods. And when the Voting Rights Act was gutted, the deciding vote from the conservative justice said that there's no proof that these states are still discriminatory in the way that they administer, elections. And immediately after that, they started targeting us, Black people, brown people, poor people, with precision. They were absolutely targeting us with precision to try to reduce our access to voting. So although Stacey Abrams is doing an amazing job turning out the vote and getting people to register and getting people to show up to vote, it should not be that hard. It should be easy to vote, right? So we really need a re-strengthening of it. And we need to say permanently that these states have shown that they have a permanent invested interest in trying to disenfranchise the Black and brown vote. And so you can never, ever trust them to change their election laws without some type of strict scrutiny from the Supreme Court. So I would really be interested if we can eke out a victory in Georgia and take control of the Senate, if we'll actually pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because that will really change things.
Who was it that cast that decided that vote? Was it Alito, or was it the justice that passed?
I think it was Scalia, which is the one who passed away. I think it was. I'm going to have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure it was Scalia. And because he said there's no proof that there's still, it was either Scalia or Roberts, actually. And he said there's no proof that that these states are still discriminatory in how they administer elections, and that they still have, some type of discriminatory intent. And so you should only be able to overturn what they do if you can show discriminatory intent. And he turned out to be absolutely wrong, because every single voting bill that's passed in Texas has been for discrimination's sake. North Carolina, they did their gerrymandering so discriminatory that I think it was the Supreme Court that said that it was with surgical precision that they were targeting Black people. So
in order for that to happen now, that means that the Democrats would have to regain the Senate, because they would and so it come back down through Congress back to them, and then it will hopefully it will go on against the desk of the president. Is that am I asserting correctly right there?
Yes, sir.
That's right.
But I would say this for the government to admit that, the Supreme Court to admit that there's wrong, is to admit that there's still blatant racism in our government, and they're never going to be willing to admit that.
See, they will admit it, right? And that's why I get that. That's where I get that surgical precision comment from. That actually comes from a Supreme Court decision that overturned a voting law that basically targeted Black people. I think it was a redistricting law, and made it so that basically Black people just couldn't vote, right? Or almost impossible for them to vote. And the Supreme Court said it was with surgical precision that they targeted Black and brown communities. But it has to be beat you over the head, completely obvious, there it is up front, like, hey guys, we're being racist. That's what it has to be in order for they have to show a discriminatory intent. And that's really, really hard to show, right? But it's not impossible. It does happen because they are so blatant about it. They are so blatant about it. They're really, really bad at covering it up. But unfortunately, it's the more like nuanced type of things where the effect is discriminatory. It's obvious that the effect is discriminatory, but it's hard to show that at the outset, the legislatures who passed the law intended to be discriminatory, right? And that's the stuff that kind of slips through the cracks, and that's how we end up in this situation.
But I'm saying that that's the problem. That
yes,
you know what it is, but you're not gonna be willing to step up and say, "Hey, we got to stop this." We're gonna be like, "Oh, hey, it keeps happening. Oh, they did it. They did it so well that we couldn't even stop it." Hey, you saw it coming. You saw it coming. You saw that pitch, that fastball coming in real slow. Real slow. Right. And bam, they hit it right out the park and said, oh yeah, they did it so well. No, you saw it happening. You saw it. You knew what the outcome was going to be before it even happened.
Indeed. Wow. So so it does seem like, there's a lot of work to be done. And, with everybody, like our conversations, we talk about Black Agenda, Biden met with, who did he meet with, who did he meet with today? The black, civil rights group. So I'm assuming that, it's not just about, putting people in, or people of color or whatever in places, to make, just decisions, but to add, to develop policies, not just the Civil Rights Act, but policies that can hopefully fix some of the harm, that has been done, within these last 4 years, and for someone to come out and say that they still believe that this president did the most for Black people, they're off their rockers. They're delusional, and to keep buying and accepting that crazy bill of goods, is just incredible to me. But especially when there are people like us that are still selling that story and trying to sell it to other people that look like us.
There's something wrong there. There is something wrong. On my YouTube, I've done several videos on people, Black people, especially in the music industry, who are taking money to sell us on Donald Trump. I find it very, very disturbing. And they will just tell bold-faced lies like, oh, Donald Trump is the best president for Black people, and Black people are doing so great under Trump, and it's like, oh, we're just going to ignore the pandemic and how we're doing way worse in this country than we are anywhere else, and how Black people are dying disproportionately more than anyone else, and unemployment is higher for us, and hate crimes are going up against us, and police violence is going up against us. We're going to ignore all of that because Trump literally pays these celebrities, Black celebrities, to come out and endorse him. And I just find it so nefarious and frightening that, it had somewhat of a sway over the Black electorate. There was, I think, too high, not, a majority or anything like that, but too high a percentage of young Black men that were going for Donald Trump. That really, really concerns me. So, there could be an even worse person that comes up and they're able to buy the celebrity vote, and in turn get the votes of people that are not well informed. So it's really concerning.
So what was a messaging that you think resonated with young Black men, that, did not come from the Democrats? Why is it that they gravitated? What is it that they felt that was promised to them, and why did it sound so believable?
Well, I want to say this, and I'm not going to say all our youth is like that. Yeah, our black
Yeah,
men.
yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm going to say that um, they follow trends and they listen to the crowd, and they listen to the musicians and the basketball players. They rather believe them before they even go get the information from themselves. You're following Lil Wayne, like you following Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne stays high. He stays gone. But that's
right.
You're following for political advice.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be a nitwit to actually stand up and be like, "Oh man, if Lil Wayne, like Lil Wayne, looking for help, he needs a pardon from Trump right now because he's going to court."
Once again, he did get So how is he not going to go to jail? I mean, he's a felon.
Yeah,
that got caught with gun here in Miami. So how is he not going to go to jail? I don't understand it.
Money is the only thing I could think, because he definitely, if he was just any Joe Schmo off the street, you have a conviction for the illegal possession of handguns. You went to jail for that, and now you're caught again with the illegal possession of handguns.
Mm-hmm.
But I think going back to your, original question, which is how does something like this happen? I do think it's a vacuum of, and we were kind of talking about this last time, Black male leadership, right? People need modeling. Human beings need this, right? Representation really, really does matter. And so if you don't have that leadership at home, and then on top of that, in your media, you don't have any leadership of a Black man who's educated, respected, or maybe not even so-called traditionally educated, but at least well-versed in the area and speaking directly to you and not over you, right? Then you are going to look to your NBA hero, your NFL hero, your hip-hop hero, your favorite singer, the person that you follow on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, right? You don't seek out primary news sources. A person in their 20s rarely seeks out news sources that have primary source reporting. Usually they're relying on second and third hand information, meaning they got it on the Shade Room, they got it on TMZ, they got it on Instagram, they got it on Snapchat, they got it on TikTok, they're not even really on Twitter like that, they're not on Facebook. Their misinformation is even coming through that, but it's coming through social media, right? So they are... And in school, they're no longer teaching what primary source information is. They're literally not. They're not teaching journalistic. They used to teach that, like journalism, and how to research an article and how to spot whether or not this article is reliable or not. So not only are they not reading articles, they don't know even where to go to get the information. And so their information is coming from their favorite artist speaking out, who themselves has a financial incentive to basically sell to their fan base whatever political candidate is willing to pay the highest dollar. There was a list that Donald Trump put together during the coronavirus pandemic, like the height of it, where he was seeking out Black celebrities to say that he was doing a good job with the coronavirus pandemic. And one of the people that he had on that list was Lil Wayne, and one was 50 Cent. Also Cardi B, who they have a lot of problems with, and she turned them down, but they wanted her and they wanted to pay her. 50 Cent came out and said that Trump offered to pay him $1 million for him to support him, and he turned it down. So he himself knows that Lil Wayne took that money, right? So how do we convince our people that this person that you idolize, when this has been your only Black male role model or source of modeling, is actually selling you out? that your vote is worth $1 million to him. You know, that either way, whether or not Donald Trump is president or Joe Biden is president, Lil Wayne will likely still be solvent. He'll likely still have money. So he doesn't really care who's president, right? And maybe it'll even benefit him to have Trump as president with those tax cuts for the very wealthy. He doesn't care about, you know, little kids in the hood, you know, 18, 19-year-old kids struggling to make it, working jobs and going to school at the same time. He has no relation to that whatsoever. He said that. He doesn't care anything about Black Lives Matter. He said that. Only thing he cares about is his money and his B words, right? He cares that he makes a lot of money. He said that in an interview. He doesn't care about people getting shot by the police, right? All that he cares about is his money. So he can't relate. And he says he relates more to the white kids that show up to his concerts than the Black kids. But these Black kids, they don't know that. They don't watch his interviews. They don't know what he's been saying. So all they see is their favorite rapper, you know, and to them, he's a legend. And that's who they're going to go with. You know, when your legends really should be those that are well-versed in, you know, the issues. Your legend should be like Mark Lamont Hill, but they're not following them. They're not paying attention to them. So.
Well, I want to say something too along concerning Lil Wayne. And this is, I think it speaks well about the generation because he was concerned about getting the bag. And all you hear from this generation is we got to get to the bag. They don't care what you got to do to get to the bag, long as I get to the bag. And this is no such thing as integrity when it's come to getting to that bag.
Well, but is that just only pertinent to, you know, folks like Lil Wayne and, you know, people that follow him, or is that a more pervasive thing where, you know, because when you look at people in business now and just in life in general, that is the proverbial thing: get the bag, get the coins. So it doesn't, and so, you know, where some people say, no, we can't be bothered to be caught up with anything political. I'm just here to get bags and get coins. You know, so and I understand, you know, yes, life still has to go on. But if you keep sequestering yourself or shutting yourself off from the thing that supposed to help you get coins and bags, if you're not fully versed or you know, understanding that, you know, why you get your bags, why you get your coins, and how are you able to keep your bags and keep your coins. You know, if you're not knowledgeable about, you know, the way of finances, the way of policy, the way of this, the way of that, the way of your local government, this, that, and the other. You know, you're operating business in a lot of different places. You know, so it just seems to me that you would want to know these things, but obviously that's not true. Like, whether it's just, I don't know if it's a generational thing, you know, or what.
If anything, the Republican Party is adept and probably even masterful at messaging, making themselves seem like they're the party of obtaining wealth, keeping wealth, upward mobility, right? So a lot of people that are not, and this is Black and white, this is everybody, but people that are not well versed in economics or politics will immediately identify the Republican Party with, this is the party I join if I want to make more money and keep all of my money, right? I want those tax cuts for me. But we know that in reality, when the Republican Party is in control of the White House, the economy has tanked every single time in modern history, right? The economy tanked after Reagan, trickle down economics, and we needed a Democratic president in order to fix that. The economy tanked after Nixon with the 70s. Oh my goodness, it was horrible. The economy tanked after George Bush, tanked after George W. Bush, and it's tanked after Trump. And they want to grade him on a curve and say, oh, if it wasn't for the coronavirus pandemic. Well, I'm sorry, but had it been another president that actually knows how to run the government, we wouldn't have had such negative effects to the economy as a result of the coronavirus. They are the presidents and the parties of bubble and trickle down economics, housing bubbles, all types of different types of bubbles, unsustainable economies where they believe that giving as many tax cuts to the very wealthy as possible is going to lead to people underneath them, the middle class, lower middle class, and the poor, somehow benefiting from that because those super rich people can now afford to hire people. That form of economics has been proven to be wrong time and time again. Yet, because Republicans are good at messaging, people keep falling for the okie doke, right? Like literally, Clinton left with a surplus, and George W. Bush squandered it and left with a deficit. And then Obama got us back going right again. And now Trump has squandered that, right? So it's like very, very clear that if anything, the Democrats are terrible at messaging to young Black people. Black people are always talking about economic advancement, economic reparations. What can we do to advance our communities? And I always argue it's not just down to how much money we have in our pocket. There are systemic issues outside of that. But if that's what you see as the number one, rubric for how successful your community is doing, then why wouldn't you gravitate towards the party that messages to you as though they are the party of success?
But those people don't end up getting the bag. And I guess that's why the messaging works.
Yeah.
That's why the messaging really works. Because they will accept it in the hopes that we're really going to get this bag. And our communities are going to thrive, but I think their messaging works because they're very consistent at it. It's not a one-time thing, and it's for them. It's about 4 or 5 things, and they will continue, hitting you right over the head, right over the head, right over the head, until it becomes, a part of part of your life, which is what I was saying, a few weeks ago when we were discussing, the whole Black agenda. And I was saying that the Black agenda has to become a part of our normal vernacular. It has to become a part of, the daily prerequisite, for conversation in government, when it comes to what is it that we need and all that good stuff. That's the messaging, that we need to hear. It has to be resonated. It needs to resonate, and needs to, they have to be consistent about it. And we have to be consistent in how, in being there and showing up, showing up for whatever meetings, showing our faces, because I think, for a lot of us in all communities across this country, I think we are guilty of not showing up in the places that we need to be present. We're not present at city councils. We're not present at you know uh, the things that deal with our communities. We're hardly ever there, but we're always someplace else, and we're not in the right places, showing our faces and consistently showing our faces and having our voices heard. And I think that's something that we need to do differently if we're talking about our communities, and how we're going to still to maintain successful businesses and everything. We have to show up and consistently, so people can see your face. If you're not there, you're just as well gone or dead.
I agree with you, Ari, on that.
I agree.
So yeah, we got lots of stuff to deal with and take care of. you know
Okay,
so
so let's go ahead and pivot to our president elect cabinet and the moves that he is making and the moves that he has yet to make.
Mm.
mm,
So he just I believe he just said that he had who he elected to he appointed tonight was what department?
Miss
uh,
Hud,
yeah, Miss Fudge to HUD.
Hud.
Okay.
And Miss was it Collins or the Secretary of Defense, the black general, that they're saying may get some pushback because he has not been out of he hasn't served his 7 year retirement from the military, and they're now saying that the position was really created to have civilian oversight on
Mm-hmm.
the military, and they don't want to yet again vote on a waiver like they did Mathis, because Mathis was not fully, he hadn't served the 7 year term. And so you're finding that on both sides of the aisle, there's some Democrats that said that they don't want to do it again, and there's some, and obviously, Republicans, that's their sole source of pushback right now. Um, regardless or not if the guy is qualified, that's their beef right now.
Well, that's beautiful, and I'm gonna let them finish, but I need them to shut the hell up because, excuse me, but all the norms were completely destroyed under Donald Trump. We didn't care
Exactly.
anything about norms under Donald Trump. You're gonna let Joe Biden have his cabinet picks, okay? The president gets to choose his cabinet. If the man is qualified, give him the appointment, okay? Because I don't care if he hasn't been out for a full 7 years. He has military experience. He's smart. Looks like he's well put together. I'm looking at his qualifications right here. And at least he won't be somebody who bought the seat like Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos didn't know what she was doing, nor did Ben Carson. But because of their donations to Donald Trump, they got cabinet appointments in the United States government. So I need them to shut up, especially the Republicans, because they sat by and they let Trump do whatever he wanted and broke all types of norms. So unless it's a law, I don't want to hear anything about norms.
Right.
Nothing at all.
But it's the party of hypocrisy, because it doesn't matter what they say 4 years ago or during the 4 years, they're gonna come right back. When it comes to Senate confirmations, and they're gonna say whatever they're gonna say, and it's gonna be as if they never said anything before. It's almost like it's gonna be new brand. And people going to like, wait a minute, it's like nobody's going to be there checking them. It seems, and if they do, they don't care either. They're going to say what they want to say. But it's just like, yeah, it's just a part of hypocrisy. You when you have Mitch the Turtle, that's saying what he's saying. It doesn't seem like it matters to them.
Mm.
So they're not going to shut up. And we would like for them to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem like they're going to shut up. They're going to say what they're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to object in the way they feel is necessary to cause the hold up. The same argument the argument that you're saying, the president gets to choose his cabinet. That's the same argument that they used when he was recommending all these unqualified people. People who had no business being anywhere near government. The same way as these judge recommendations. People were there telling them, no, these judges they're so not qualified. But it doesn't really matter. We want them on the bench. And if you have someone that's there to push it through, yeah, so it is. So that's why these 2 seats in the Senate in Georgia, that's why it is so important.
So important. I get it. I get that the Republicans are going to Republican.
They're
going to Republican. They're going to do their Republican thing, that thing they like to do. But I don't accept it, number one. But number two, I need the Democrats to get lockstep like how the Republicans were. They would say things like, oh, I'm not really into Trump's rhetoric, and I wish he wouldn't say things like that, but they would vote with him like 99% of the time. And they were afraid to go against him. I need the Democrats to get on board and stop pussyfooting around. I'm tired of it, They always want to be the party of morality to the detriment of the rest of the country. Let that man have his cabinet picks. Joe Biden has tried to be president 3 whole times. He's been running for president for like 30 years. Let that man have his cabinet. Give it,
Let
okay?
him walk, yeah, walk out into the sunset, having like, doing something so here's the thing that I feel, here's the thing that I feel is going to happen is that in some, people are, you have the naysayers, they were saying that, he was the devil, blah, 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 whatever. And I think that part of his presidency is going to fix some of the ills that he probably felt responsible for, in his previous, part in government. Um, hence, when he said, what he ran on, having a diversified, you know, cabinet. Some people are going to be happy and some people are not going to be happy based on certain choices. I mean, but he has to do, what he thinks is right for his presidency. But I do believe that a part of his presidency is going to be, trying to rectify, some of the things that, he didn't get right at some point, when he was, what is it, a senator, or all that good stuff. So yeah.
So, um, who do you think that he should have in some of the cabinets that are still not filled yet?
Well, I don't see how there will be. I don't know what, if any, role there could be for her at this point, but I really was hoping he would pick Susan Rice. I know why he hasn't picked her. She was favored as Secretary of State, but he hasn't picked her because she was ambassador to the UN during the Benghazi controversy, and they basically like tarnished her name. But I was hoping that she would get some during those, Benghazi hearings that were a total waste of time. But I was hoping that she would get some type of appointment somewhere or some type of role in his administration because she is highly qualified and highly, highly intelligent. So I was kind of hoping for some role for her, but we'll see if he still, puts her in some way. And I
Right.
do think Sally Yates would be a great AG. I understand why they're considering Doug Jones, but I really do think it should be Sally Yates. She has a strength of character. She basically was like, I'm not going to do this stuff that Trump wants me to do that's illegal, as she's the one
Right.
who stood up after Comey. So I really feel like, she should be rewarded for her bravery.
So do you agree with? Because I was listening to um, I was watching Capehart earlier this evening, and he was talking to Butler and the president for, I think it's NAACP, and both of them were in agreement that was saying that if not the AG, definitely the deputy, they should be two people who at some point should have represent the component of, civil rights, and that should be a big part of, what they're going to their platform, not just the law and order aspect of, being edgy and the laws and all that good stuff, but a civil rights component, is definitely important, in how we sort of reestablish, some of the norms, and laws that were just so brutalized, over the last 4 years, you know, um, and I think that position is, you're going to see so much hypocrisy in that confirmation hearing, and I think, when you have, those idiots, the loudmouth, the former wrestler coach, and the regular loudmouths that
Mm-hmm.
are going to, try to pull everything out of their butts to try to discredit, when this current AG did everything in his power to be the president's lawyer,
Despicable.
and I think, he's looking to jump ship before he gets fired,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's inevitable. Yeah, Trump wants to fire him. Trump's going to fire him. Um, you know, it's just a matter of time. So he's like, okay, no, There was no fraud, blah blah blah. I'm not on this side anymore. So everybody is trying to clean up. I don't know what I don't know how you clean up such a mess. you know, you can't come out looking clean on this one at all.
But
You
wasn't that so predictable? What you just said about people trying to the rats jumping ship, basically now that it's over, and trying to distance themselves from it. Like I always thought with these people coming in, especially the ones that had some pretty decent reputations, I was like, they're going to use him to elevate their platform, and then when he's either getting kicked out or lost the election, they are going to disavow him, right? Like they never knew him, like a bunch of Judases,
right?
I just knew that was going to happen. That part, I'm just making a side point. Like that part doesn't surprise me at all.
Well,
Because yeah, it was inevitable.
Cool.
I think it's almost as if they were quiet for a reason because they were internally playing their own game. Just a lot of them, got bit, and got bit badly, but they were trying to play a secondary game, you know, the face up front and the face behind. Like you said, everybody I think was looking out for themselves on the back end to a certain degree. Um, whether it's monetary or, but when if your reputation gets discredited so much, not that I care. I don't really care about them. You they put themselves in that bed, and
But it's the position they hold. It's not them. It's how they've ruined the position that they hold.
right, right.
Mhm.
So people coming into these positions now, it's kind of it's so satisfying and gratifying. I think when you see the qualifications of the people who are actually being nominated and listed, and you're like, wow, the person for X has experience in X. They are uh, reputable. They have strong background in what they're doing, and it just seems like, wow, these people can make a difference, or make the changes that are going to need it for cleanup. And let it be known, the cleanup is going to take a long time,
Mhm.
and it needs more than one term of, I think, democratic government. It definitely needs two term. Shoot, I'll be happy with three.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
or another two double terms. Because so much of it has eroded. Um, and people can say what they want to say. You but I don't really care. Um,
Mhm.
I think that's what's needed. So I'm happy to see that we're going to have people in cabinet positions that know what the hell they're doing. Because
Mhm.
people seem to think that just supposed to just government doesn't run on its own.
Mm.
It does not run on its own. It does not run on autopilot. And when you're there with someone that just wants to take control of everything, and our government fell into such ruins, because you had one person that wanted to take control over everything. I know everything, I can fix everything. you know and basically he knew nothing and could fix nothing. you know
Mhm. And the people that were supposed to step in from his party and stop it were kind of like, oh, well, he can't do that much damage because we have an established government, almost as though the government is on autopilot.
Mm-mm.
That's a
Yeah.
really good point, because people were taking for granted that the government is just people. And if people are not fulfilling the roles that they are supposed to fill, then the government doesn't work. There is no government. It's like if everyone abdicates their duties, then there's no government to run things. And that's exactly what's been happening in the past 4 years. And now we've seen that there is a government that's needed for this large group of people on this huge landmass. It's actually needed. And what you said about them being the cabinet picks being experienced in the areas that he picked them for, is so true that people are complaining that the cabinet picks are boring, which is crazy to me. Because have we become so used, this is like a real good question, I think. Have we become so used to like a WrestleMania type of death match type of government where, you know, every week it's who's stepping down, who's getting fired, who's committing a scandal, who bought their seat, who knows nothing about this area, and they're just there, you know, and let's see the crazy things they say and do next week on America 2020, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas Joe Biden is just like doing normal things like Marsha Fudge for, you know, he's got her for housing and urban development. And she has experience in housing and urban development. You know, it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's not fun. Like picking a lobbyist to head up the Department of Education, you know? So
right.
we have taken it for granted that experienced people that know what they're doing are the ones that are supposed to be in these positions. But Trump has made it a death match. And just one more thing off of what you said, Uncle. Did you know that William Barr said he was going to step down? Because I know you said he was thinking about it, but he's announced that he's going to step down. Did you guys know that?
I didn't hear that. I didn't know that last part that he had announced that he was going to step down. We just hear that he may not, blah blah blah. Yeah. You know, and you know, so here's the thing now. So all these people, you know, that are, you know, vacating, you know, the ship, the house, whatever you, and so what exactly the people that they're putting in, you know, like, you know, people like Corey Lewandowski and all these crap names. So is their sole responsibility now to really put more fire on the bonfire, you know, to really burn things down on their way out? Because they're on their way out. You know, what exactly are they going to effectually change in 45 days?
I think their key responsibility in the next 25 days is to cover their tracks. I think that's what they're going to be doing. I think they're going to be shredding papers, paying off witnesses, getting rid of documents, covering their tracks for the inevitable federal prosecutions that are coming for their miscarriages of justice in office, their grift, their obstruction of justice, all the tax evasion and all those type of things that they've taken part in, the misuse of their titles in order for their personal enrichment. All of these things are criminal offenses. And yes, and the fact checker says seeking pardons. Absolutely, they're going to be seeking pardons. I think this is going to be the time where they're going to get their houses in order. Some of them are going to probably flee the country. They've been committing massive crimes. Massive crimes in office, you know? So that's what I think they're going to be doing. I think they're going to be trying to avoid prison time.
Well, and evidence is just going to just miraculously disappear.
Yes, I think documents are being shredded right now.
Well, one of the key things I see is most people are talking about Trump pardoning himself before he gets out of office.
Yeah. He's going to try.
I'm like, how?
I don't think that's likely.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't think that would sit too good with with people if he does that, because that's like admitting you created all these problems.
Well, who you said it won't sit good with people like what, you and I, because you know the other side, it don't really matter to them. You know, so
but I think that once he does that he can lose some of the people on his side.
No.
You don't think so?
No, and not only do I not think so, I don't think he'll care, right? So the whole pardoning himself issue is multifaceted and interesting, but I think ultimately we'll stay in hypothetical land because Nixon looked at pardoning himself, and you know, they did a lot of research on it back in the 70s. They say there's no precedent for it, but there are actually opinions that, you know, courts don't believe that sitting presidents and executives can pardon themselves, governors, mayors, people like that, that they can pardon themselves. But aside from that, he doesn't need to pardon himself. In order to be pardoned for any federal crimes, all he needs to do is resign in his last few weeks in office, and then Mike Pence becomes president, and Mike Pence can pardon him. So he never needs to run into the question of whether or not he can pardon himself. On the way out, before he resigns, he's definitely going to pardon a lot of people, like how he pardoned Mike Flynn, like how he pardoned Joe Arpaio. But ultimately, there are state investigations into the Trump administration, the Trump organization, his children, their business dealings in New York. The Attorney General in New York is sitting with indictments ready to go the day that Donald Trump is out of office. So whether or not he pardons himself is an exercise in futility, because he can't pardon himself from state crimes. And those are right there. They're ready to go.
Right. And yeah, and I'm assuming that's not just in DC and New York. I would imagine that, there are other things elsewhere that, is on the books. Maybe because New York and DC, it gets talked about more. But yeah, that should be, that'd be quite interesting.
Now, I wonder, can we, once we get out of office, can we bring a suit against him for trying to tamper with the election?
But from we the people,
that from saying that it was fraud, trying to muck up the system so it wouldn't go through.
Just you mean the 2020 election or the 2016 election?
The 20.
Because those are two different types of interference that he did in those elections. Which one?
2020.
2020. No, I don't think that there's any, at this point in time, for Trump himself, I don't think that there's any legal jeopardy for him for pursuing these frivolous lawsuits, lying about the tenor of, the investigations into any particular type of election fraud, or, lying to the public. There's no, first of all, he has immunity as a sitting president of the United States. But in addition, the people that are really at risk are his attorneys, who say one thing to the public and then enter into court and say a completely different thing. If they ever advance the arguments that he actually wants them to advance, which is that there was some type of fraud in the election process, right? They could be disbarred. In fact, when one of Trump's attorneys was questioned, and the judge said, as a member of the bar, as an officer of the court, are you advancing an argument that there was fraud in this election? And the attorney said, no, Your Honor, as an officer of the court, I can't say that, because they are in legal jeopardy. They could lose their law licenses. They could be criminally charged for perjury. But Trump himself, as the client and the party, and the president of the United States, legally almost enjoys complete immunity from suit or legal repercussions for these lies that he's advancing. It's different from 2016 when he was he was not the sitting president, and he was conspiring with a foreign government to interfere in our elections. That was a no-no. That was against the law. But this stuff he's doing now, I don't think it's illegal.
So what's the repercussion when it comes to the norms that were broke? How does Congress reset that in terms of making some of these norms laws? How and would that be a viable option to tighten up some of these things that we saw just got thrown out the window like the bathwater?
Mm-hmm. We need to. Unfortunately, as you all know, it won't have any effect on this.
Not on this, because the whole thing with the whole pardon, is that the precedence is being set for, for as long as this country is in existence, there will be another similar to him, in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form. Whether it's inevitable, okay? Because of the you see it in how people talk about their politics, and you see the ideas, and these are some very strong ideas that people have, and people are like, what are you talking about? But they believe this stuff, and all it takes is for someone to the thing about him is that he came out and he told you everything about him. You knew exactly what. So my thing is, you will have someone that comes in a wolves in sheep clothing. Yes, I'm going to do all these great things, and then come in and then start to practice the politics that they've been wanting to practice that will harm the country even more. You know, so how I'm assuming that there has to be some way to rectify some of that stuff. I would imagine, I would hope. It can't just be just because I think when you look at the democratic side of government, it's as almost as if they're still believing in the gentleman's handshake, and that does not work.
Yeah.
Okay, the gentleman's handshake does not work in
Mhm.
government and politics, for the most part these days. Especially when you're dealing with a cat like 45.
Mhm.
You got to be dealing with a gentleman.
Well, we have to deal with the fact that this is a country of laws, or at least it's supposed to be, and glad handing and maybe it was always a problem that it was a policy of personality. Basically, we were relying on the good graces and the friendly personality of whoever the commander in chief was, that they would, shake hands and agree to disagree and then follow along with whatever norms were in place, or else face the disapproval of the public or the general political establishment. Well, when you run into someone like Trump, who doesn't care what the public thinks, doesn't care what the general political establishment thinks, then you see that that's a flawed system altogether. So we always say that he's not the problem, he's the symptom of the problem. He was definitely the symptom of the problem in that respect. We definitely need to codify the norms. All these norms need to be laws. They need to be ruled on, they need to be debated, they need to be voted on, right? And someone needs to sign, up or down, veto, yes or no, whether or not they're going to pass, a law that says, you can't hire your family members to fulfill positions that really didn't exist before, right? That you cannot transfer your properties to your family members and run your properties or your businesses through a shadow corporation, basically, while you're also president of the United States. You cannot pressure people, right, to sleep in your hotel if they are coming to meet with you or meet with your cabinet members or anything like that, or meet with your administration. You shouldn't be enriching yourself. You shouldn't be playing golf. 9 times out of 10, he's out playing. Maybe we should put a limit on how frequently they can play golf, And like, seriously, a serious thing, because it really is that you wouldn't think you would have to put that stuff into law, but look, you do, because you get a sociopath in there and they just do whatever they want.
Yeah, and so that whole the whole so I think one of the things that when we talked earlier about the monies that people are sending him for this after election fundraising, and you know the whole fine print of everything, because in the fine print I think it says 75% of that money, and I think they say may, of course, I understand legal things to a certain extent, but they say may, but we know it's definitely going in his pocket. And the thing that the people who are donating the monies, that they don't seem to get, or maybe they don't care, I don't know, but all that money that they say may go into whatever such pack, what have you, it goes directly to him.
Mm-hmm.
He has the absolute right to spend the money in how he sees fit to how it benefits himself. When he leaves office because he's thinking, okay, I'm going to, campaign or what have you, and um, so this money that he's raising, um, is going directly to him to, so he can crime some more.
Okay.
Mm.
Nat, you have anything else you wanted to say? Your mic is muted or something.
She froze. She froze. I feel like I'm
Well,
preaching my ass about here right now.
bringing it back to the cabinet picks, though, I feel like the picks are mostly safe. Um, I like that there's a diversity as far as women are concerned and people of color are concerned. I would like to see a few more Black men in there. And other than that, I'm okay with it. I'm fine. These look like competent people that know how to do a job, right? So far, he hasn't picked anyone that looks like Ben Carson or Betsy DeVos. So I'm good. That's just how I feel about it.
I like to see them actually nominate the um, first indigenous person, because there were two people. I think it was for the interiors or something like that. One was one's a woman and one's a man. Um, you know, that will be the first, for this country. So when it comes to diversity, I think you can't keep ignoring First Nation people um, out of your government. You know, and good that they are in a position now to be dominated. You know, but when it comes to diversity, yes, the government should look like the set of what the people of this country, it represents. I think when we would look at those pictures and you see those cabinet meetings and you saw no color, you know hardly any women, if there was any. Well, how many, was it like two or three women that were on this cabinet, you know um and you're just like, but this is not America. But when you talk to some people, say, no, no, yeah, that's the America that we want. That's the America that we want represented. You know, but everybody that lives in this country, that's not the country, that's not the cabinet that we want to see, because that it's like going into court, and they say that you should have a jury of your peers. And when you see a lot of these cases that are coming up, these old cases, and a lot of these defendants getting rifled and railroaded, black guy, 12 with the 12 jurors, 12 jurors, all white. And you're just like, wait a minute, but that's not a juror of my peers. Oh, well, you ain't got no money, you're black, you're gonna take what we give you. So the same thing happens. The justice system. They said they did reform. Yeah, okay, they did a little teeny weeny bit. But there's so much more to do on that end as well. The justice reform system. It needs a huge overhauling. Because you're tired of seeing these videos of what is good for the goose. It's definitely not good for the gander here. The same system should be meted out across the board. If you go give the white guy 6 months for egregious act, you should give the black guy 6 months for the same egregious act. He can't be in there serving 30 years for the same stupid little crime. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we need competent people that understand and are aware of the things that need to be changed and fixed. So yes, I'm glad to see competent people being nominated in these positions, but I just hope that they are people who are going to charge themselves with um, doing the work that's needed. So you don't go back, be talking. They should be there to really make some positive changes. And so we can see it on our end, you know.
Yeah. I mean, representation matters, right? And so it's not just important for the sake of diversity that Joe Biden appoints members to his cabinet and his administration that are representative of what the country actually looks like.
Hmm.
It's important because it is emblematic of what his priorities are. It is hard to pass policies that actively hurt Black and Brown people when you have a significant representation of Black and Brown people at the table who have the authority, who are not just tokens like in the Trump administration, and have the authority to speak up and, you know, give their opinions on things to benefit their community. So it's so important and it's so necessary. And we have been lacking that for the past 4 years. And it's clear that the Republican Party doesn't understand that, and they don't understand the importance of our voices. They think that the importance of our voices is just to show that they're not racist. They think it's just that we're just there to show, oh, see, look, I will put a Black person in this position, but the Black person has no experience in the position, or the Black person has no real voice. They really can't speak up or else face some type of backlash or firing or something like that, or they're disposable, instead of being an integral, trusted, respected part of the administration. And so, unfortunately, the Republicans just don't understand that. And so that's why you end up with a person like Ben Carson. That's why you end up with Kanye West, you know, sitting down in the Oval Office surrounded by a bunch of people talking to Donald Trump. That's why you end up with endorsements by Lil Wayne actually potentially threatening how the election is going to go, right? Because they don't understand the importance of the Black voice. They don't seek out Black voices that are voices of authority or knowledge in the subject matter that they need to speak to them about. So I am looking forward to that in this upcoming administration. And I hope that, as he said in his speech, his acceptance speech, that he knows that Black people helped him to get here and he won't ever forget that. I hope he never, ever forgets it.
Yeah, especially the Black women, the Black woman, because and I think just as a people in general, if you can what they were doing in these challenges and these legal challenges, they were pinpointed in all the areas that were predominantly Black that won the election in those states: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Um, I think they tried that in Arizona too, but those three main states and Georgia too, they went specifically to those predominantly Black areas, basically saying we don't want Black people to vote because their vote shouldn't really count. And that's the takeaway that I got from everything that they were doing. They were just basically saying, yeah, we said all of this stuff before, but right now we're saying your votes don't really count and it doesn't really matter because you guys are still 3/5. You are not a whole and you don't really matter. And, that's what I got to say.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing on that and then leave it alone. I think it's kind of like something that's understood, but it's not really been being said as plainly as you just said it. I think that's one of the ugliest things about this, about what Trump is doing and trying to overturn the results of the election. The precision with which he is attacking Black and Brown communities, Maricopa County and Detroit and Atlanta and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, all of these majority minority cities where the Black and Brown vote gave the election to Joe Biden were decisive in rejecting Donald Trump. Those are the places that he is trying to attack and say that somehow us expressing our voices is somehow nefarious and underhanded and illegal, that we're illegal even when we vote. We're illegal in everything that we do, that our bodies are criminalized, our minds are criminalized, our votes are criminalized, trying to find some type of criminal activity in us expressing our constitutional right to cast a vote. It's disgusting, right? And so, as you said earlier, anyone that can say that this man is the best for Black folks is insane, because it's not a mistake or an accident. If it was a majority of poor whites who were voting for Donald Trump or for Joe Biden in Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever states ended up being the swing states, if it was a majority of poor white people, there's no way they would be going after them the same way that they're going after us. They feel comfortable that they're not really going to be challenged in attacking our vote.
True that. What you gotta say, Mr. J?
Well said. Well said. I agree with what Natalie said for the most part, especially on the cabinet. That I just would like to see a couple of more Black males in there if they're the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna be upfront. Don't just put a Black man up there. To put one up there.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement in that. Yeah, just
Nobody wants another Ben Carson.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Ben Carson.
That's embarrassing.
We don't want that. But so real quickly though, what do you if you had your crystal ball, what do you foresee happening in the midterms? Do you think what kind of where is the momentum you think gonna go
2022?
for 2022? I think it's going to be a barn burner.
Well, I think it depends on, I would say, the first 100 days. The first 100 days of what Biden is doing in his office. Once he gets it, and once it starts he starts putting plans in place, how the public will perceive it will translate to what's going to happen in the midterms.
Well,
so I disagree.
Messaging. We screwed up on messaging for Latinos, thinking that all Latinos were the same. Whether it was Florida, Arizona, Texas, what have you, all Latinos were not the same. Latinos here in South Florida respond to the word socialism a different way than it means something totally different. You could say a whole bunch of stuff and you end that sentence with socialism, and you start talking about these catchphrases, defund, and stuff like that. People will say, well, yeah, no, it means a lot in how it's perceived, and the takeaway messages to people. A lot of people in the house lost their seats, because even though they were not running on that specific message, but just because that was out there, they, like you said, they understand how to seize on an opportunity and not just run with it, but you would think that it was the greatest invention, in messaging. But they understand how to capture opportunities and seize on those opportunities. So we gotta be, not just be, and I'm not saying be, tippy toeing, but understand what the messaging is, who we're trying to connect to. Yes, a lot of younger people voted, in this general election, but across the board, we have to have people come out in force in midterm election. Midterm elections are always pitiful. 2018 was probably an anomaly, because of the Me Too movement and all that good stuff. So I don't know what the next thing is going to be to project, into 2022, but they definitely have to shore up their messaging and how they connect to people, because elections is always about how you build and grow your base. You still, yes, 80 million people voted. So out of 200 and something million people that we have that are eligible, we still only had 150 million people voted. There's still about 100 million people that still didn't vote in this election. You see what I'm saying? So you still need to grow your base, and with the right messaging.
So I have a bit of a pushback on that. It's not, I was going to say I disagree, but I don't think I actually disagree. I think what it is that I think there's a component that's missing, that traditionally when we talk about what is campaigning, if not spreading your message further, getting your slogans right, making sure that you're not alienating people, expanding your base, getting out voter registration. But all of that is for naught if we do not attack the issue of gerrymandering, which is drawing districts in such a way to give Republicans outsized control. If we do not attack the issue of our conservatively bent court that upholds these voting suppressing laws and gerrymandering laws that allow for people to have, less representation, to make it more difficult for them to vote, as long as that continues to happen, there will be a consolidation of the Republican Party, and the Republicans will take over more House seats, because they are, again, attacking this scientifically, statistically. They are attacking, marginalizing Black communities when it comes to the access to the vote and the representation of our areas. There's something that's kind of flying under the radar that Trump is doing, which is messing with the 2020 census. He interfered with the 2020 census to try to make it difficult for brown people to be counted, because he wanted to put a citizenship question on there, and he wanted to make it so that people that were not citizens could not be counted. So that makes it so that minority communities are underrepresented when it comes to the allocation of the House seats, right? And we also need to get into our local elections, because it's the state legislatures that pass these redistricting laws. It's the governors that, pass these laws about, voting access and voting rights and things like that. So I think that in preparation for 2022, we need to be tackling our local elections. We need to be tackling our local legislatures, and we need to be fighting in the courts against these redistricting laws. It's not the fun stuff. It's not the stuff that makes the front news, and it's not the most salient to everyone, but it, I think, is more important than messaging. Because I think ultimately, while we may want to point to phrases like defund the police, right, we have to also look at the fact that in the areas where Democrats lost House seats, those Democrats weren't necessarily running very good races. They were taking for granted the urgency of, Republicanism and Trumpism and MAGAism. They weren't taking those things into consideration. And it had less to do with, calls to defund the police, and more to do with the fact that people were not receiving the right kind of representation for themselves, nor were they able to access the ballot box as easily as white people in their communities. So those are also things that we need to look at as well.
And they can't underestimate the power of the will of the people. They totally underestimated that so many people would actually come out and vote for him. They were just like, no. They hate him. No. The same people that said the same thing that happened in 2016. Oh, we don't like him. We can't vote for him. They're the same with the suburban women, all that. They said the same thing again this year. Most of them probably came on TV and interviewed, and we're gonna no. And what happened? The percentages went up. And
our percentages went up, and so did theirs. And we always count on higher voting turnout being for the benefit of Democrats, but as we've learned this year, that is not necessarily the case. That it can also mean high Republican turnout.
Yeah, and so they have to be mindful of that. And so yeah.
And there was a flipping that, this is not something that's getting talked about a lot, I don't think. I've seen a few analysts talk about this, but basically where Arizona in particular, where there are people that voted Republican down ballot, but voted for Joe Biden. Still, those people are Republicans, right? Yeah. They just defected from the Republican Party because they're tired of Trump. Right. But there's no way those people were ever going to vote down ballot for Democrats. So we can't really beat ourselves up. We should always analyze everything, but we can't really beat ourselves up too much for how the down ballot races went. I mean, in North Carolina, you had, even though that state didn't go to Biden, he outperformed the Democrats that were down ballot. But one of them, Cunningham, had a sex scandal or something like that. I don't know why you would, think that this is a candidate that's going to do well. So we just have to consider the fact that in conservative areas, people were done with Trump, but they were still going to vote for Republicans down ballot.
Right. Yep. Don't underestimate the power of conservatism.
No, never. It's deeply held.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to say this because this was a good show and bring to the close this episode because we had a couple of rounds of closing statements.
Never know.
We got shit to say, sir. We got shit to say.
Hey, I don't doubt that.
It was a good subject.
I don't doubt that. For the people that don't know, we are now available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and what else?
We're on Twitch, YouTube.
Yeah, we're on Twitch, but these are the audio that they can always go back and just listen to. If they don't have time, you're riding in your car, you can't be looking at your phone trying to look at YouTube, but you sure enough can put it in Google Podcasts and Spotify and what else is out there.
Are you on Apple?
No, not on Apple yet. But we're on Breakers, Pocket Cast, and Radio Republic. Mm-hmm. So you can catch the podcast on these sites and definitely listen to it. This has been another episode of The Bridge, and we thank you for joining us, and we catch you next week.
Yeah, large up my knees. Yeah, large up my knees. Yeah.